You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Music to your ears.
Indeed.
It is Matt, Andy, and Jasmine. You're welcome.
Even though you didn't ask.
You're welcome for joining us.
Yes.
That's right.
Welcome to our
We're actually
family.
very appreciative that we get to go into your ears every Monday or whatever day of the week it is, and whatever episode you're downloading from one of the 170 plus episodes at this point.
Rattle around inside your head.
We are appreciative that you made us the #1 shoe business podcast in the global world.
That's right.
And outer space, because we broadcast it to Neptune and it circles around.
That's right.
It comes right back.
We put this in one of the satellites that beamed off, so when the aliens find it, they know.
We are so good that the U.S. government determined that they wanted to send our voices to outer space.
They did.
Now that's either to educate or to deter people from coming to America.
Right. That's right. And is any of this true? No, of course it isn't. But
it's true in my mind.
It's true in your mind.
That's right. Folks, we've been going on the last couple of episodes talking about obviously some of the biggest news stories and impacts to our industry and to the business side today, and that's obviously on the tariff threat that we've had. And we've been talking to experts that help a number of brands in the industry and other industries as well on the supply chain side. Why? It's mainly because I think the industry's done a really good job of turning a corner and focusing on great product, figuring out the channels to sell it to. But again, the biggest challenge that we see today, and what's really kind of separating some of the more successful companies outside the product realm, is supply chains. It's agility, speed, finding out where you can trim cost, but still have those products delivered in an efficient time. And so we've recently talked to several different folks, and today we get to talk to one of my favorite people who attends nearly every single one of FDRA's events, has sponsored and been a strategic partner with FDRA for the past 5 years, which is huge because their sponsorship money goes into helping us fight these tariffs. So it's hugely important that we have that support. But I'm really proud to invite Mike Piza to come on from Apex Global. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on today.
Absolutely. So, Matt, we're talking supply chains.
We are.
And we know Apex is one of the leading kind of air freight.
Yeah, they don't fly to space with
the voices,
with
our angelic voices.
If you guys are going to space, I'm following.
This show is kind of going into the stratosphere already.
That's right. It's out of this world. Crazy. No, so Mike, you've been a thought leader in the space because of what you guys do on the air freight side and all the other logistical hoops that you help your customers jump through. And what is always really interesting to me is how you kind of articulate the world we live in now when it comes to logistics and the movement of goods and just helping the footwear customer think outside of the normal four walls of our industry and think about what is electronics doing? How are companies driving product more quickly to consumers who are demanding it more quickly via e-commerce? And that's where, to me, having the flexibility of air freight as well as the other things that you do at your disposal is so key, because the consumer's changing, and that means the companies, the importers, the brands, the retailers have to change with the consumer. And so walk us through kind of what that looks like from an Apex Global Logistics perspective.
Sure. I think, Andy touched on some things there in the opening. Obviously we're having a lot of conversations with a lot of people with regards to, the impact of the tariff situation. It's putting a lot of challenges on the supply chains. I think people are looking at a lot of different options. Depending on the industry vertical, we're seeing folks react differently. I would say, some of the electronics folks, they can easily shift around production, right? They might have factory operations in multiple different countries, and in order to avoid some of the China burden at the moment as it relates to tariffs, they're trying to shift some of that production relatively quickly to some other factory locations. With other industries, a little bit harder. I think, we see a lot of companies in the U.S. that also have investments in the factories in China, for example. So it's very hard just to walk away from those investments. And then, there's also, supply chains that are very mature that, have a lot of skilled work and are definitely not going to be easily movable. I think I see as it relates to the retail and shoe side of the conversations that we've been having, we see, I think everyone's going to, we're hearing most folks are going to kind of stay put and see how things play out over the course of time here. But I think there's one key distinct difference too. If you're a direct retailer, if you're someone, selling direct to customer in your own retail stores or online, I think those folks, they have the ability to, if the tariffs are impacting them or will be impacting them, they can obviously just raise the price of the item. But the folks that are selling to the retailers, we're seeing them scramble a little bit more, right? Because you can always make something cheaper somewhere else, for example. So they're looking to how can they be market competitive, while still making the same items, but possibly in a different location at a better price. So, I think there's a wide range of things happening. I think there's so many uncertainties around it, right? I mean, you guys, probably feel the same way I do. You don't know what's going to happen next. And so I think a lot of folks are still just kind of sitting back and seeing how the whole thing's going to play out.
Yeah, uncertainty is the key word here because you have business that thrives on certainty, that has negotiated prices on product 6, 8, 9 months ago, facing a political process that is relatively short term in the sense that we'll have an idea in the next little while as to what's going to happen, and then how that will impact prices and what percentage and what can be shared with the consumer as far as price increases go. If it's 10%, then we're looking at something you can spread out throughout the supply chain. If it's 25%, all bets are off and the consumer is going to get hit very negatively. And so I think right now there's going to be a push probably with air freight to get product in quickly. Mm-hmm. Talk about how you use air freight in not even just specific to this, but when there's a disruption coming, whether it's a port strike, a labor unrest, a trade policy, how do people use air freight to get stuff in ahead of the storm, if you will? I
mean, you're right on point, Matt. June is a very high demand month for air freight. We see it already. The volumes are going to be incredibly high here. Anytime there's market disruption, you have the air freight market spike. So I guess a heads up to I guess the whole community here that June will be a very strong air freight month. And I think the main reason that is happening is, right, you have some important dates coming up, right? There's a comment period that you guys responded to, right? Whether there's going to be a fourth list. And I think, some folks that are in a position where they can ship air freight to try and maybe, beat that list or try and, speed up their supply chains ahead of that list. I think, those folks are airing an incredible amount of product coming up here. So that's just that's kind of a heads up, and I think from our perspective, you have to have balance, and controlling capacity is the key. So in recent years, Apex, we always have the commercial airline space, whether it's passenger aircrafts or freighter. We also went very heavy into the charter air freight market, where we've got 7 flights a week that are regularly scheduled coming out of China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. And most of those go into Chicago and Los Angeles, and we will be going into Columbus here in July. But I think you've got to have capacity control, and when these spikes come up, you've got to be able to service all of your customers. You can't have slowdowns in the supply chain.
So no slowdowns in supply chain, disruptions are out there. We've got, one of the, I think, challenges that we have with this is that people don't know what the dates will be, but you're also coming into, take out the uncertainty, you're also coming into, as you say, major peak periods for back to school, and then we're heading into holiday. Yep. I mean, how should the companies be thinking about utilizing air freight, and what are, rates are spiking, but is it still something that's an important part of the array of tools that companies use to bring product in, particularly, again, going back to the consumer demanding more product, fresh product, customized product, de minimis products, small shipments, small packages. All that has to mean that air freight is all the more important.
That's correct. I mean, it's speed to market these days. So we're seeing folks that didn't used to do air freight. Anytime a product gets hot and they can't keep inventory levels, that's obviously one of the key indicators of a high air freight environment. We've talked about this before too. I mean, e-commerce. We're just seeing an incredible amount of cross-border e-commerce activity, and I think it's pertinent to talk about it here. But if you can do fulfillment from foreign markets, like let's say into the USA, you can bring those products in duty free. So anything, I think everyone knows that anything under $800, as long as it's going B2C, comes into the country duty free. So as we've seen these tariff increases come up, we're seeing people get very creative with that. You're seeing some fulfillment activities from Canada and Mexico, and directly from some of the Asian markets as well. As long as you're going B2C. So you're seeing people get creative and try and do some different things, but that's definitely driving some significant air freight growth as well.
One thing that you always do really well to highlight when you come to the footwear events is sometimes we in the footwear industry think we're the only ones out there that are shipping product from Asia into the U.S., but there's, this crunch that's coming, especially when it comes to air freight, is electronics and all sorts of products. So it's not just going to be an increase from our end on our products, but it's this coming gathering storm of all these different products that are trying to get in ahead of, July or August, when we think that, that the earliest date of implementation for the new round of tariffs will happen. So maybe talk a little bit about that too, because I think some people forget that capacity issues are also due to multiple products.
That's right. I mean, basically everything that's left that hasn't been included in the list is, what I'll call like the daily consumables, apparel, electronics, footwear. I mean, there's obviously a lot of items there, but the more items that you find in every house have kind of been excluded. So all those will now come down with significant tariffs. And those are high volume products with high margins. Some of them, like you said, on the electronics. So they're definitely can I guess afford the air freight. I think we're seeing a lot. I think the apparel folks are also preparing quite significantly. They've kind of they haven't been too impacted so far, but I think that's changing. So they're also trying to figure out what's the best way to adjust. But I think that'll drive air freight very, very high as well. Demand very high.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about obviously everybody has been trying to look outside of China for some time. Some people are finding capacity, some people aren't. Some people realize they can renegotiate rates with factories in China better than they have been in years because there's this kind of fear of people leaving, or there are actual people leaving. But when it comes to air freight and we look at our supply chains kind of changing and morphing, it seems like air freight makes sense from places like Cambodia or Bangladesh if you're doing any number of product there because of the elongated time it would take to ship it through on ships. So maybe talk a little bit about not just footwear, but other product you see. Where is the largest growth or new growth coming for air freight? Like what countries are you guys seeing your customers ask you to start shipping it from?
Yeah, well, there's an interesting shift going on. We'll go back to electronics for a second,
Sure.
But electronics were originally made in Taiwan, right? And then they shifted it over to China, and now we're seeing a little bit of a migration back towards Taiwan. And we're seeing activity in Bangkok quite a bit, in Thailand, on that side of the house, and I think for some other commodities, obviously Vietnam is the popular choice. And I was actually in Hong Kong last week with a footwear supplier, and they were talking about how they're going to use Vietnam, but they're also concerned about limitations on how much product can be produced, and also at the current moment, the freight solutions out of Vietnam are limited. And I would say, right, there's an existing market there that's been there for a while, but they're not prepared from a logistics standpoint to take on all that additional volume. So they're asking us to help them prepare with that. And I think Cambodia and Bangladesh are interesting, especially for the apparel side. And then you've got other political issues that it might cause some challenges, right? If you look at what's happening in Indonesia and things like that. So are those companies ready to take on additional volume and kind of put in infrastructure to help maybe some of these companies that are trying to make these moves to new countries?
So, Mike, let's pivot away from kind of geopolitical issues and trade policy and talk more broader industry. Talk about Amazon's disruption in the air freight space, Prime Air, owning their own fleet. How does a company like Apex see that as a threat or a challenge, or what do you guys do better that maybe Amazon doesn't do and doesn't really know how to do because it's not their core competency like it is yours?
Right. I think, with them, first of all, they're a partner. So, and I think what they're doing is fascinating. Is really fascinating to watch. I mean, just getting so close to the customer, is pretty amazing. I had something delivered same day the other day. But I think, when it comes down to it, everything is regional. So, I'd like to believe that one person can't do anything. I think Amazon might challenge that. But I think if you've got a strong product and if you've got, you've got to have a value proposition, and I think you can overcome that. But I think that they're definitely going to cause some strain on some of the smaller providers, and I think we just got to continue to watch it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's they're kind of coming into all aspects of our lives from a variety of different angles, and I think continuing to watch it is important, but also the brands trying to understand the importance Amazon serves as a platform to meet consumers, while at the same time can absolutely be a competitor, and trying to ensure that they're being more proactive and thoughtful about how they engage with the platform. And Nike's doing that. I think some other brands, others have pulled off, like Birkenstock altogether, because of the threat that it has to their brand. So everyone has to approach that in a different way and in a unique and thoughtful way. Getting beyond that, what's kind of the future in automation, in technology? How are things? How are you guys investing or thinking about investing in technology that will help build efficiencies into the supply chain?
There's some really cool stuff going on now. I think, I think everyone's challenged now. I think everyone wants data. Everyone wants their hands on data. And in the supply chain, obviously, you have a lot of places where you can collect data from, right? You can get it from the factory, you can get it from the origin, warehouses or things of that nature. You can get it from the transportation providers, air, ocean, trucking, customs. So being able to put all that data together and make it easily presentable to a customer, I think helps customers make good decisions. So, I mean, I think there's there's really cool stuff going on the technology side. I think that it's going to continue to evolve. I think the airlines are really stepping up their game in terms of technology, right? We're only as good as the data we receive in, and the same goes for a customer, right? But if you've got everything like live time, that's a real game changer. I think we're moving towards that environment here. I mean, everybody wants data, right? I mean, I'm sure you hear it from all your customers. If you have all the data, then they can make good decisions. So.
Yeah, data is only. It's funny because we all want data, right? We all want it at our disposal. How we digest it, regurgitate it, analyze it is a totally different ballgame. And sometimes you just want it there as a safety blanket. You may never even access it. And so I think it also comes down, particularly in this industry, Mike, as you know, and that's why you show up to FDRA events, but the personal touch, the one-on-one engagement, the face-to-face meetings, all those things are so important for people to kind of critically think about how to best strategize around their logistic profile, how they're balancing between air, sea, land when it comes to logistics. Yeah. I mean, I think data's only as great as what you want to get out of it. And
let me emphasize that point a little bit, because we're seeing people really analyze data real well right now. Like one thing that we're seeing is customers are looking at, like, okay, if the fourth round of tariffs go into place, here's going to be my cost of product, right? And it doesn't make sense for me to air freight it before that 25% goes in. So, if you have all the data in your hands, then you can make an informed decision. So we're seeing customers like take all that data and say, okay, should I air freight, everything I've got in the factory and get it in here before that fourth list goes into play, let's say. And we're also seeing folks, just take all that data and kind of figure out, what they should do. Is it worth continuing to make that product right in China, or is it worth really trying to take a look and move it around? So I think we're seeing some folks really, if you have a good source of data, we're seeing some folks really, analyze it very closely and making some very good logistics decisions around that.
One if by land, two if by air. Is that how it's working nowadays?
That's it, man.
Tell me about when we talk about capacity challenges and a growing number of people using air freight because of, basically we're hitting a strange period of 1 day delivery, or even same day delivery, right? So we're heading towards this new frontier where we all thought 2 day delivery. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And then Amazon's like, we're going to throw $1 billion at this and try to make it 1 day and figure that out. So that's a whole different kind of challenge. So obviously air freight will become more important for certain product that Amazon and others can offer same day or 1 day delivery. I mean, when you deal with that, we were talking about, technology and investments, are we going to see more cargo planes being purchased? Are we going to see, are more brands going to start purchasing their own fleet? I mean, Amazon obviously is, but I mean, what are we,
Yep.
What's happening with that?
It's a great point, Andy. Actually, there's not a lot of new aircrafts being built, and, in our industry, the 747 is, it's one of the most beautiful things to watch, fly. It's just, I love to watch them land. It's just amazing. The amount of weight that they're carrying is beautiful. But there's not a lot of new aircrafts coming onto the market. A couple of years ago, you heard all the ocean carriers, they ordered like 10 ships, and that capacity is kind of still coming into the market, right? So there's not going to be any issue there on the capacity side, but the new aircraft entering into like the freighter market is very limited. So you have some new passenger, obviously aircraft's always coming onto the market. But not as much on the freighter side. But I do think that's something that's going to have to change. I mean, I've talked to a few different folks about this. Some of the large charter operators, because we're always searching for more aircrafts. But I think that's something we got to keep an eye on. Right, the aircraft's got to meet the demand at some point. So.
Right. When you guys fly from say China or Vietnam, where are you guys landing? Like what part of the country you guys see a lot of
Chicago. We love Chicago.
Okay. So
we
center
love
of the country
basically. I don't mean to cut you off, but
no. Yeah.
So of those charters, I think 5 a week go into Chicago, and 1 goes into Los Angeles, and we will be going into Columbus. Yeah, but the center of the country makes a lot of sense for distribution reasons. So
okay. Because I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, they've had warehouses in the same place for a long time, but 1 day shipping, if you're going to start heading there in the next year or two, you've got to start figuring out. So it just makes sense if you're looking at, obviously, when we're shipping, we're talking a lot about Port of Long Beach, Port of LA, West Coast,
right.
But, we're always curious.
Yeah, LA remains a very important airport, right? So I don't want to take anything away from that, right? There's still, I think it's the largest cargo airport in the country. I think I'm speaking more from an apex perspective. So,
okay.
Well, Mike, this has been a fun journey, and it's about to get even more fun because we're going to bring in Jasmine to do what you got, what you getting. Jasmine, welcome to the program. Walk Mike through your world famous "What You Got, What You Gettin" segment and how it works.
I think he's ready for this.
He's ready. He's a fan.
Ready.
So I'll just show you the test round. So I have on my feet currently some white Converse, high top Converse, which are like my favorite. I buy a pair every single year. And I think what I'm gonna get next is some new Pumas. I have low top Pumas that I wore last summer, but I kind of had too much fun in them, so they're all dirty. So I'm gonna get a new pair. So that's what I'm getting next.
Cool.
Who wants to go next?
Matt will go next.
Matt.
All right, so I've got on my feet, I've talked about this on the show. I wanted to get a Fear of God Nike collaboration. I finally got the Mox. It merges my theology and my fear of the Lord with my favorite apparel item, which is footwear. And it's a unique look. It's cool. And so I got those. The next thing I've actually purchased, haven't been delivered yet. The world famous Tinker Hatfield, who is a designer from Nike, Jordan, just has so many great designs. He did some designs for Converse, and so they just launched a pair of two different types actually, where you have low top, high top, black and white. But the Converse Star Series RN by Tinker Hatfield, and I got the white low tops, and they will be delivered here in the next few days, and I can't wait to wear them.
Next few days? What are you talking about? Maybe they need to air ship it.
Hello, Apex.
Mike, what you got?
So I've got my favorite pair of dress shoes on right now. I've got a Allen Edmonds Stan Monk on.
Okay.
Nice.
Real comfortable shoe. I've kind of come to like them, broke them in nice now. So it's a nice, comfortable shoe to walk around in for sure.
What you gonna
With
get?
some style. With some.
Nice.
I think I'm going to get a pair of Vans. I think I want a pair the blackout Vans.
Yeah.
Something classy, simple you can wear every day, and I think it's got a nice style to it.
Yep.
Right on. That's awesome.
That is awesome. What about you, Andrew?
Well, I'm going to counter you. I've got devil shoes on today, designed by Metastophocles himself, to counter your Lord, fear of the Lord. So, no, I'm kidding. Am I kidding? I don't know. I've got on some Sanooks today. It's getting a little hot outside, and so I'm wearing Sanooks. I don't know what I'm getting next, really. Maybe I'll get some Allen Edmonds. Maybe I'll take a cue from my friend Mike.
Yeah.
And grab some Alley E's,
That'd be
as I like
nice.
to call them
There's
in my hood.
There's 2 stores in DC, and it's owned by Caleres.
I won't be buying in store.
I know.
It'll
how
only
you
be
work.
e-commerce.
I know.
If it's not delivered to
So
my
can I-
door, I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a lot of shoes, guys. I don't know. I probably have maybe the most shoes you've ever had for a man, or I'll give you a good run for your money. So.
Really?
Yeah. We'll have to compare, man.
We will. The next event.
I figured you guys would have a lot in the closet.
We do.
Matt does.
Yeah, indeed.
When Matt took this job, I think it increased substantially, probably tenfold or
Big
something like
time,
that.
man. Big time.
Shoes in his eyes. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights and what you guys do and the support you give to the industry.
Hey, thanks a lot for including me, guys. I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks,
and
Mike.
of course, Mike will be at our events in New York for the Sourcing Summit, FTDC. Our producer always tells us to keep these shows evergreen, but the truth is Mike's always at our events. So I can say this: Sourcing Summit, FTDC, and it'll be every single year. So it is evergreen.
That's right.
Take that, Blake.
That's right.
Folks, this is Shoe and Show. You can get us at shoeandshow.com. Drop us a line. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Let us know how you like these shows. Give us comments and feedback. Tell us what you want us to talk about. If you have ideas for guests, let us know that too. If you want to be a guest, we're happy to grill you. Some people call us hardball. Chris Matthews is very afraid of us. His show's hardball, but he's not as hard as us. Folks, thank you very much for listening. Definitely give us 5 stars because we earned it, and you know it, and I know it. On behalf of Jasmine, Matt, and myself, Shoein is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.